Good morning. I'm sitting in my room in Tel Aviv. It's next to my last day here in this beautiful city, a city that is growing beyond anything I've seen. There's so much industry here. New hotels are going up. But that's not what you wanted to hear about. What you wanted to hear about is what's happening in the Gaza-Israeli war. Well, from what I could tell when I went to the southern territories, the war really is winding down. There was almost no fighting in the Gaza Strip while I was there. Yes, in the kibbutz Rim, where we were listening to the stories of survivors, there were bombs heard in the distance, and we couldn't go to Ashdod and Sderot because of the bombing. Gaza, Hamas bombing the cities in a last gasp to control the narrative. Many of you may not realize, but Israel has not been in Gaza for 18 years. Most likely, that was a mistake. It was a mistake to leave them there with no idea of what they were doing. And what were they doing? They were militarizing the entire strip, creating an underground tunnel system that rivals the U.S. subway system in New York City. 350 miles of tunnels. And I saw some of those tunnels when I was here 10 years ago. An 18-wheeler can drive through them. So they understood the Israeli defenses, which was basically visual surveillance and other surveillance and tanks along the border. And on October 7th, that's when they decided they were going to carry out their grand plan. They didn't care what happened to the Palestinians inside Gaza. No. All they wanted was to hurt Israel, to annihilate as many Israelis as possible, and then to have the world condemn Israel for taking actions against the Palestinian population. A population where at least 50% had been engaged in building those 350 miles of tunnels. Tunnels where they could retrofit rockets. Tunnels where they could store grenades. Tunnels that came through schools, houses, and hospitals. All for the sole purpose of having a military infrastructure that was impregnable and unseen. But it was seen to a lot of the Palestinians. And if they didn't understand the consequences of war with Israel, Hamas did. And Hamas knew that the condemnation of Israel was part of the reason they were going to attack. And attack they did. And they massacred Israelis. And they butchered children. And they raped women. And the world is saying, oh, stop. Don't go after those in Gaza, the poor Palestinians. Well, I feel sorry for the Palestinians that didn't know what was to come, who weren't building the tunnels, who weren't taking part in the manufacturing process. I feel sorry for them. And I feel sorry for the Israelis. The Israelis who really didn't need to suffer such trauma and are still suffering trauma. This is hand-to-hand combat, just like we saw in Iraq and just like we saw in Afghanistan. And we know from Colin Powell's words, overwhelming force is the only way to win a war. The world has no appetite, and nor do I, for overwhelming force, because we forget how many people die with overwhelming force. So, the need is still to neutralize Hamas. They gotta be demilitarized. If Bibi doesn't have a day after plan, well, I do. The day after plan is hostages are released and a pan-Arab force, plus probably the US and UK, go in to establish order in Gaza, making sure that Hamas no longer ever gets a foothold, nor any Iranian proxy. And it would be only Sunni Arabs involved. And the same Sunni Arabs who were going to take place in the Abraham Accords with Israel, they should be forming a NATO-type alliance with Israel. An alliance that blossoms into trade, into protecting each other's borders. Iran knows no fear. And if we could nullify Iran and Iran's proxies, Hezbollah, Houthis, ISIS in Iraq, we'd all be better off. Not only that, we would be stopping the flow of weapons into the Ukraine as well. And then Russia would be a little less aggressive. And perhaps Russia and Putin would sit down to the peace table. I certainly don't want to be part of that evil empire. I don't like despots. I don't like tyranny. I like equality. I like freedom. I like progress. And you know what? That's what most Israelis want. They don't want never-ending war. It's 6 months people here are in mourning. Very few celebrate the way they used to celebrate. Very few can go to parties. So many are in the army, or everyone knows someone who's a hostage. We'd like to see the hostages come home. Then you can have a humanitarian pause. And I certainly hope that there is some kind of talks going on in Lebanon to move Hezbollah 20 miles from the border so that their rockets, their precision rockets that they haven't used, don't become problematic. It's time for 250,000 people to go home and feel that they're in peace. As far as Bibi's concerned, wrong policy, wrong time. The people want him out, and he will be out, and there'll be a new government to deal with. As far as the ultra-Orthodox already are concerned, they're going to be drafted. They may not put on the uniform, but they're going to be doing national service. No group should be exempt from being in the military when security is so important in Israel. I have no reservations about giving money to Israel, about supporting Israel, about being friendly with the Israeli people. They are our brothers. They're yours and mine. Every group deserves our empathy and our caring. If I can care for the Palestinians and want to see a state for them, then you can care for the Israelis. They're not going anywhere. They don't have any place to go. So this homeland is something that they are going to fight for, and fight for with all their might. But again, it would be much better to have Israel included in the Sunni Pan-Arab Accords. And together we can have a just peace.